Hi everyone, welcome to the next session, which is prompting. So what is prompting? Prompting is any help given to a student to assist them in a target skill or a specific task. This is just making sure or assisting them in making the correct response. It involves 3 different components, which we're going to discuss those, 5 different types of prompting, and 3 different prompting procedures. So you're going to start noticing a theme, but there are 3 components of prompting. There's the antecedent, which is the event or directive that comes right before the behavior. There's the target skill, and then the consequence, which is whatever comes after the behavior. Prompting helps learners increase success and generalization of the target skills you're working on, and then it also reduces frustration if they can have a little bit of assistance in making that correct response to complete the task or to accurately engage in that target skill. There is a prompt hierarchy that ranges from least invasive, most independent, and goes to the most invasive and the least independent. And we're going to discuss each different kind of prompt on the prompt hierarchy. So the first one we're talking about is a visual prompt. So this is cues or aids that provide information in a visual way. This helps students look at something and be able to make that response. So it's a prompting students through a visual. This could be pictures, images, written words, positional cues, anything like that. We're helping our students and we're guiding their behavior and their actions. The next one is verbal prompt. This is by far the most common prompt, and it's also the prompt that students are most likely to become prompt dependent with. It's super easy to default to that verbal prompt, which are instructions or cues that are given in spoken language. There are 2 different categories. There are direct prompts and indirect verbal prompts. Direct prompts would be those explicit instructions, and then indirect would be more of hints or reminders. But regardless of what kind of verbal prompt you're using, it is using spoken language. The next one we're going to discuss is a gestural prompt. So these are physical gestures that are used to help learners make that response. So you might even pair that with a verbal prompt and say line up. If the learner doesn't line up, you might go ahead and gesture to where they're supposed to be. And then they will get the idea that, oh, they're supposed to line up. These prompts use body language to guide actions without physical touch. Next, we're talking about modeling. So modeling was all our last section, so you guys know a lot about it. But what's really cool about modeling is it does fall on the prompt hierarchy. This is demonstrating the desired behavior or skill for the individual to imitate. So we discussed in the modeling section how modeling can be a primer or a prompt, and this is modeling as a prompt. This type of prompt involves showing how to complete the action and allowing the student the opportunity to do it the same. Then there is a partial physical prompt, which is providing some physical assistance but not doing a complete hand over hand or body control situation. This prompt involves light physical guidance but still encourages some independent action. And then there is full physical prompting, which is comprehensive physical assistance to complete a task. So this is going to be more of your hand over hand, helping the learner with body control. This is going to be the most invasive prompt there is, where the person is guided through the entire action. So next, we're going to discuss different prompting procedures. We have least to most, graduated guidance, and simultaneous prompting. So the first prompting procedure we're going to discuss is least to most prompting. So this is utilizing that prompt hierarchy we discussed earlier, and we start with the least invasive prompt. So we want the learner to be the most independent. When you're figuring out what type of prompt you should start with for each learner, because that's going to look different for each student, you're going to give your student an opportunity to respond without any prompts. And then you're going to use least to most. So you're going to start with visual, then go to verbal. And then once your student makes the response, then that is going to be the control prompt. So that's where your your baseline will be. Eventually you want to try to allow your students to be the most independent as possible. But if your student needs to start with modeling and then start to work their way back or up, that's absolutely okay. But the idea here is we don't want to just go in with that full physical prompting if it's unnecessary. So we really want to try to give our students the opportunity to be independent. And this is how you can figure out where your students might be falling on the prompt hierarchy. So graduated guidance is where you're going to start with that control prompt we discussed on the last slide, and then you're going to gradually start removing that prompt. You will add back the prompt if the learner starts to regress or doesn't make the correct response or isn't able to complete the task. Then you can start adding that prompt back in. But this is just a level to, or a way to measure your students' independence level and be able to kind of see where they're at with being able to complete the task more independently. So when I'm thinking about simultaneous prompting, I'm thinking about it like we do errorless tasks or errorless learning. So we're going to divide this up into two sections, a probe and instructional section. Probe is where we provide the task without any prompts or any corrections or feedback to kind of gauge where our student is at with their independence in completing the task. And then after that, we are going to then do more of an instructional prompt where we provide the skill or the behavior, and then we immediately provide some type of prompting without any delay. So the student doesn't have the opportunity to make an incorrect response or they have to complete the task correctly. That way students understand what it's supposed to look like. And then we can start to fade that back after some time, but this is going to be more of that errorless type of prompting. So just a few reminders, if you're using prompting procedures, you must also have fading procedures. The idea is that we want our students to be as independent as possible. So if we are going to use any type of prompting, we have to have a plan in place to say, hey, here's how we're going to pull back and allow our students to take over. Learners are also most likely to become prompt dependent on verbal prompts. It's super easy to default to that verbal prompt in the classroom, but it's also the type of prompt that our students are going to be most reliant on, and they should learn how to do things without us having to tell them every step of the way. So it's important to remember that we have a whole hierarchy of other prompts that we can utilize instead. And then we also want to save full physical prompting for safety, hygiene, and self-care. This is extremely important because we want our learners to realize that, hey, it's not okay for an adult to come over and just do something for you or take over your body and show you how to do something. Of course, full physical prompts have their time and place. That would be if a student doesn't know how to toilet by themselves and we need a little prompting there or a little bit of help. Absolutely. Or if a student doesn't know how to brush their hair or brush their teeth yet, this is absolutely a situation where we can step in and help our students out a little bit. But also, I remind you that there is a hierarchy there. So if you have an opportunity for your students in those areas of safety, hygiene, or self-care, that to allow a little bit more independence, absolutely utilize that time. I'm not saying if you use full physical prompts, you are a bad person, but we want the idea of body autonomy to be instilled within our students. And if we always just do full physical prompting, it can kind of teach them that it's okay for somebody to kind of do whatever they want with their body. And we really don't want our students to feel like that's okay. This happens really easily in early childhood settings, so I recommend that if you feel like, oh yeah, maybe I full physical prompt a little too much, maybe I do a little too much hand over hand, maybe when it's not necessary, I recommend that you go back to that prompt hierarchy and maybe figure out some different prompts that you can utilize instead of just that full physical.